From EPAWA Weather Consulting, headquartered in Worth Whitehall, Pennsylvania, this is Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are those of the forecaster alone and may not reflect those of the staff of EPAWA Weather Consulting LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Now, without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Hey, good Sunday morning to you. Another edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, February 20th. We're running out of time for these videos. We're going to be transitioning into spring here very shortly, but we do have some colder periods to get through, and this is a change from what we had in the previous video, in the previous long-range outlook that I did not this past Friday, but the Friday before that, that suggested we would have a milder turn toward the end of February that would last in the beginning of March. Well, the exact opposite is going to end up happening, and we'll discuss that here in this video, and there's a reason why that has happened, a very distinct reason why. We had all models going toward one direction, and then they all of a sudden went the other way, and there was a big shift. There's a reason for that. So we looked at the long range that we did on Friday, which is here. You see these ups and downs with the temperatures that are going to continue for the upcoming week. We have a milder period coming in after a colder weekend, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. And then we have this kind of near to slightly above average period. That's going to depend on location. Further north, you might be slightly below average during this time frame, 24th, 25th, and just so happen to coincide with a late week storm threat that could have a wintry component to that. So we're going to talk about our initial thoughts on that in this video as well. But then after that, you get into a really cold period. Not only did you go from slightly above average, which was previously projected in this period, you went the complete opposite end of the spectrum to slightly below to below average during this period, all the way up to March 5th. Then I do think you're going to have like a little bit of a, it's not indicated here, but you might have like a day or two of moderation where you get back to near average or thereabout or pretty close to it. Then we're going to go right back into at least slightly below average after that point through about mid-month. After that mid-month period, there's a lot of questions. What it's going to do? Are we going to stay colder, or are we going to start moderating a little bit? There's still some questions there that has to do with tropical forcing propagation at that point. So we're going to continue to follow that period very closely, but we do have February ending very shortly, so we're still expecting near average temperatures for this month, and then slightly below average now for the 31 days as a whole for the month of March, slightly below average, -1 to -3 when the dust settles at the end of the month. Okay, here's what snowfall is, and we do have that snowfall projected to be kind of near average or near to very slightly above average. In March, it's going to be hit or miss. It's a lot more kind of the haves and have-nots kind of thing with March. Like last year, you know, we didn't have hardly any snow. Okay, in our analog year, our leading analog year, 2018, we had a significant amount of snow. Does not mean we're going to get a significant amount of snow, which is going to depend on each individual system. But there is the opportunity, at least in this March, that they're going to have at least some snow in some areas. Not all, but some. And this is what average is for the month of March. February, we're not going to meet these totals. We're just not going to meet what we have here. So some of these, there's some areas that are about half of this in a few places, but not, not further south. And it's probably going to end that way. Okay, we do have a chance for snow coming in here at the end of this week, but I think that's going to end up being. I really think that's going to be more of an icing deal. So we'll see. You might add a little bit to this, but I wouldn't expect, especially up here by Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, you might add to it up there. I don't expect anything down here by the Philadelphia region. I just don't. So can that change? Yes, it can, but we'll see how that goes. We're not going to spend a lot of time on the El Nino Southern Oscillation, which is your El Nino, La Nina regions, but just to show that it's relatively unchanged, slightly cooler in the eastern basins. The new model projections for the sea surface temperatures in the equatorial eastern Pacific are out for February, and it looks like we're still doing the same thing as we head to late spring. We'll head up to near neutral ENSO here and out of the weak La Nina, which we are in now. So the projections continue to take us that general direction, near neutral once we get to late spring. Sea surface temperatures, that's where we are, very similar to last week, and it's very, very similar to those areas in 2018. So we're not going to, we've been beating this drum about the analog year. It's clear that 2018 was the analog year. It's now February 20th. There's no sense in it that I'm going to keep doing this every single week at this point, because who cares what the analogs say at this point, because you're already at the end of winter. Okay, so Not really necessary. Just know that this analog worked. The one we picked was the correct one. So when we get into the Madden-Julian Oscillation, this is what's really driving the pattern, has been driving our pattern on an intraseasonal scale. Okay, so this, right now, we've been in phase 3 now for a while, which is kind of like an up and down pattern, which is what we're seeing right now. A lot of up and down temperatures, but favoring cold overall. For most of it, and then we're going back a ways. So not just this week. I'm talking about going back a ways. We were favoring cold overall while we're in phase 3. Well, now we're kind of heading into phase 4 for a day or two. Very weak amplitude though. And then the most guidance here, you see, here's the 20th right here on the right there. Here's the 20th. So most guidance is taking this into the circle of death here, and then through the end of the month, and maybe coming out in a very weak amplitude into phase 5, but it's weak. Okay, so it's not going to have a profound effect on the pattern. If you look at the, and this is the Euro, this is the EPS, and this is the bias corrected EPS. This is the Australian model here, and is doing something similar here, where it's taking a 1 to 2 day trip into the into phase 4, which is right here, which is a slightly milder than average phase, which makes sense for the early to weak stuff, right? Then you go into the circle of death and remain there after that. GFS is still trying to do one of these numbers here through the maritime continent, which is likely incorrect, and most of its ensembles disagree with what it's trying to do there also, so I don't think that's right. By being low amplitude or in the circle of death, it means it won't have a profound effect on the pattern going forward. That's just the way it works. If it's a high amplitude, like out here somewhere, in each one of these phases, it'll have a little bit more of a chance to be more dominant of what a phase 4, phase 5, phase 6 does, which is mild. This is mild and warm and very warm as you move up through 4, 5, and 6 this time of year in the month of March, okay? Since it's not going to be controlling the pattern, what is controlling the pattern is the Eastern Pacific Oscillation. This is expected to go negative this week. It's going to rebound right around the first of the month or so, 28th the 1st, something like that, to near average, okay, and then we're going to go right back to a negative EPO through about the middle of the month. That's what it's looking like, okay, and most ensemble, I can show you anything. This is the GFS extended. I did this so it showed a longer period of time before it finally turns positive. When it's negative, though, it promotes some colder air intrusions into the northern part of the United States, and some of that gets into our area. Not all of it, but some of it does, as you develop a cross-polar flow, and you get a very strong ridging into just south of the Aleutians, and that extends northward into Alaska. And look what we have here on the ensemble look in that first week of March. It's the same thing. You have a very strong ridging that is just south of the Aleutians, and then you have the ridging extending northward into Alaska, so you get a cross-polar flow, and you get cold air building in here into the northern half of the United States, and then we will get a portion of that as well. Nothing like brutal, I don't think, especially since we're talking about it's late February, early March. It's probably not going to be brutal, but you're still talking about temperatures, high temperatures in the 30s when you should be in the 40s, okay? So it's enough that you can have some snow events if that were to present itself, okay? And there are a few chances for that. So here's what we're looking at for the temperature periods. There's the warm period in the beginning of the week, and then at the very end of the week, we have a gradient pattern there. Then we turn colder, okay? As you can see, through late month, early March, it's very cold, all right? Now, this doesn't last, and it is going to decrease as we go throughout up to about the 5th or so. You see a period here where it gets right to around near average, right at the end of the period, right around the 7th, and that's because if you look at this here. Where did I go? Oh, there it is. You look at this, you're getting this rebound back to a near neutral EPO. So the EPO is basically running the pattern here going forward through at least the middle of March. And this will trump the Madden-Julian Oscillation because it's not strong enough to overcome that. Okay, so what's gonna win out here is the EPO, and that's why you're gonna have those colder temperatures. This was not projected a week ago, and yes, it has flipped completely from one week to the next, but now we're closer to the event. So this one's, when it flips at this point, and it's not going to be this wrong, this close to it. So maybe how long it holds on to the negative EPO may be incorrect, and that's why there's some uncertainties when we get past the middle of March of how long this continues at a slightly below average. Are we talking about hitting the equinox on March 20th, and then you're still dealing with these colder than average temperatures going right into at least early April? It's possible. It certainly is. I don't want to commit to that just yet, but I think the Euro Weeklies were suggesting that we would continue colder than average going into early spring at the very least, and as far as it goes into early April. that you would still be colder than average. And this is what the Euro Weeklies have for the entire month of March as a whole, looking at the period from February 28th to the evening of March 31st. Okay, and you have, it has a lot of -3 or -1 to -3, maybe even -4 degrees below average for the month as a whole. But you got to keep in mind, during the month of March, you have the climatological averages of highs and lows continuing to rise, about 2 degrees per week from what they are now, okay? So this is all relative. You could be sitting here on March 12th in Philadelphia, for example. The average high is 51 at that time, okay, on March 12th. So if you're, slightly below average, your temperatures are in the 40s, yeah, it is colder than what you're supposed to be for this time of year, but is it warm enough, is it cold enough to support some snow events? Well, it's possible, but it's a lot more difficult than places like up here by Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, Williamsport, even, Allentown back to Harrisburg and up into northern New Jersey, Newark. Those areas further north have a better chance. So the deeper you go into March, it's not impossible. We've had snow in April before. This isn't a new thing. But there is the opportunity for at least snow, but it's going to be favoring the areas further in the interior for these snow events. And that's going to be the case, I think, with this system coming in at the end of the week. Okay, so we have a snow or ice threat this week. This is the GFS that ran this morning. I don't have the new one yet because the time I'm recording this video, it's not in yet. But it shows, it's been consistently showing a snow for the interior mixing with changing to sleet, then freezing rain. And for the interior, it has it ending that way. Okay, it doesn't have it changing over to anything else, maybe ending as snow, actually. But further southeast, I-95 corridor, close to the I-95 corridor, and I-95 corridor and further southeast, it's primarily rain, okay? Even on the colder GFS, it does have some mixing initially. I think it's just a little bit, a little off and a little cold, a little too cold. This is the coldest model we have right now. The Canadian model and the European model are pretty close with the same idea. Does have a wintry mess here for that time period, but it's mostly talking about freezing rain in this case. Brief snow, sleet in our far northern areas, not even interior, but far northern, going over to an extended period of freezing rain, and then rain at the end. So let's get into this a little closer so I can show you. Here's a GFS and where that is. So you can see it's an abundance of snow in the northern areas, which would be great for areas that are below average, up by Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, for example, to add to your totals, okay? But areas further south here, you're dealing with a mess. So a snow going over to sleet, then freezing rain. It has this really far south, which I'm very skeptical about, and then it just ends here on Friday evening. By the way, the time frame for this is kind of like late Thursday night and all of Friday, at least during the day. That's what we're looking at right now. Here's what the European model has, which I think is a little bit more realistic. It has mostly, unfortunately, an ice situation changing to rain at the very end for the interior location. So if I can move this back here and stop this, let's get to that point where it stops. Okay. Now, if you see in this image, this is where it has it. The interior, this is northwest of I-95. Okay. So northwest of there, it has a significant amount of freezing rain. That's indicated by this pink. And again, I don't want to get into the fine details yet of how much and where exactly, but I'm just trying to give you an idea where the model is showing. I mean, today's only Sunday. We're talking about Thursday night into Friday. A lot's going to change between now and then, which could be trending in the direction of more warmth and rain, or maybe more cold, and either a prolonged period of ice and or maybe more snow at the front end, like the GFS is suggesting. There's a lot of times for things to change here, but you can see where what we're favoring right now. If I had to pick something, it would be generally this idea. Okay, is what I'm favoring, which is to have the ice in the interior, and there could be a significant amount of ice involved with this too, depending on the exact track. So we're going to follow that throughout the week, and again, this is not this is not the platform for that. We do that on the daily forecast videos Monday through Saturday. We'll have the latest updated information at that time. I'm not going to keep this very long because there's really not a lot to talk about other than this system here, and I don't want to get into too much detail with that, with a lot of uncertainties of track and things like that. So we're going to maintain the 2018 leading analog and monitoring MJO progression in the weeks ahead, which determines how long the colder pattern overall pattern maintains in March. So that just means that I think we're pretty set on that up through about the middle of March, we are colder than average overall. Once we get past that point, there's still some uncertainties. Does it start to warm up a little bit, or at least moderate back to near average? or are we still dealing with cold shots going right into early April and having a delayed spring? That's certainly possible too. So this is one of the things we're monitoring in the weeks ahead because of that. So we also monitoring the late week wintry potential. I think there's a very good chance we have some wintry weather with that, whether that be snow, ice, sleet, whatever. I mean, it's probably a combination of things in a slot mess, to be quite honest with you, and that's where I'm leaning for at least the interior locations. Okay, so we're going to watch that late week wintry potential. The EPO, the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, is going to be driving the colder pattern heading into March for at least the first half of the month. What it does after that is still in question, so just continue to follow along, and we'll give you the latest information on that. Hopefully, for those of you that are tired of spring, tired of spring when you get here, tired of winter, or have something to look forward to, and we're not delaying spring for you. But of course we can't control that, and we'll just kind of call like what we see going forward. But Weather Weekly's videos will continue this until we have the last wintry threat behind us in the rearview mirror. I'm EPAWA meteorologist Bobby Marchis. That is this edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, February 20th. Join us again next week, next Sunday, the 27th, and we'll give you an update on that March pattern. See how long we're looking at winter holding on. Equinox arrives March 20th during the mornings this year. So, got some time. All right. I'll see you again next Sunday. Take care.